boss to put some real action behind the rhetoric when they talk about making your workplace more inclusive? Find out how to hold their feet to the fire and demand diversity on the Diversity Dude podcast.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Diversity Dude podcast. I'm your host, Lambert Fisher, marriage and family therapist, award-winning author, and national speaker on the topic of multicultural awareness and diversity. And for those of you who are interested in even more positive and encouraging tips and strategies beyond what I share in podcasts like this, then feel free to check out my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, nationally recognized for the unique way in which it addresses the often difficult topic of multicultural awareness and diversity, designed for more than just therapists. If you're a helping professional in any way, Diversity in Clinical Practice can help you meet the greatest variety of cultural needs possible for those whom you serve. And it's available in paper and audiobook versions for your convenience. And if you haven't heard it yet, I invite you to visit TED.com and check out my talk called What to Do When You Offend Someone, where I offer a positive and practical perspective on how to navigate unintentional offenses in daily life. To date, it's been viewed over 500,000 times. Check it out for yourself, and if you're encouraged by it as well, share it with a friend. And whether it be through my one-on-one relationship building efforts as a therapist or my informing and empowering efforts as an author and speaker, know that my personal mission is to do my part to improve the world one strengthened relationship at a time. So, today I want to share with you an encouraging perspective on the pros and cons of rebranding DEI. Now, you may have noticed that there's been a lot of changes in various sectors of professional society, especially as it relates to the vilification of the acronym DEI, which stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This effort to vilify DEI has been so impactful that the acronym that represents efforts to promote the appreciation of diversity, equitable treatment for everyone, and intentional inclusion for those unfairly left out has somehow been branded as an act of discrimination itself, as if stopping people from discriminating is the real unfair treatment, as if the D for diversity means denying someone the right to see themselves as inherently better than everyone else. And the E for equity means denying someone the right to withhold fairly earned resources and keep reserving them for people like themselves. And the I for inclusion means denying someone the right to exclude anything and anyone that they're not already familiar with. In this perspective, promoting healthy appreciation of what everyone has to offer is the real problem that's seen in this country. And that's just scary. Thankfully, not everyone believes this perspective. There are many who see themselves and those around them and embrace the opportunity to learn more about everyone's similarities as well as their differences, not just as an intellectual activity, but in order to help everyone benefit from the strengths and growth areas of those around them for everyone's benefit. And yet, the political and financial pressure to get with the anti DEI equals anti discrimination program has been very high. And since no one wants to play these rebranding games and use it to let them get them fired or lose their careers or worse, then we're beginning to see more and more companies making efforts to replace their DEI programs with wellness initiatives and employee engagement programs. And while these efforts are often well intentioned, there are some pros and cons that should be considered in order to help these efforts be as effective as reasonably possible. Consideration number one, remember that it's not just the name, it's the impact. First, let me be clear. I appreciate the efforts of many companies to not cave altogether, to look out for their employees and to find creative ways to meet a variety of different needs rather than just the needs of a few. That being said, while many companies have made efforts to change the names of their formerly titled DEI programs to avoid political or financial hate or consequences, the focus of the program was never about the name, it was about the impact. I'm reminded of the disagreement among DEI programs where one company pitied another company because they only had a DEI program instead of a DEIB program for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, only to discover that yet another company had a DEIAB program for diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, and belonging. And still another had a DEIABJ program for diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging, and justice. Why do I mention this? To prove the insufficiency of programs because an inherent insufficiency is in their name? Quite the opposite. I mention it to highlight that the name is just an effort to reflect the overall broad mission of the programs, to help everyone feel culturally seen, heard, and valued, and not just in word, but in action. Some mean all of this and more in the acronym DEI. Others have felt their company's DEI efforts were good, but incomplete, and sought to make that mission mean even more and meet even more unmet needs and more in a more overt way with a longer acronym. But that doesn't make one efforts right and one efforts wrong. You know how I know? Because the customers, the clients, the employees, the students, whoever they serve, they don't care about the acronym titling the program or the initiative. They care about the outcome it generates and the needs that it meets. All that to say, I can understand the effort to rebrand from vilified DEI terms. I understand this. But what I do know is this: the effort doesn't stop with the change title. Efforts must be made to ensure that the main goal is still being met, to identify and meet a variety of needs, not just those of a few. Which leads to consideration number two. Sometimes subtlety isn't enough. What I'm referring to here is the reality that some efforts to rebrand are not just focusing on the names of their formerly titled DEI programs. They fear anything referencing diversity, culture, gender, age, and much more. It's here where they try to show that they're doing more than just deleting a DEI program, but they're replacing it with something that's intended to do some good. They're replacing it with an employee engagement program, or employee initiative program. Now, don't get me wrong. As a mental health professional, I'm a fan of promoting wellness. Physical health, mental health, and in the appropriate environment, spiritual health all benefit from intentional efforts for development, strengthening, and maintaining our best sense of self. This is all good. However, efforts like these don't automatically meet the same needs that were being met before. It can be very easy for companies to focus on general wellness, but then when an employee expresses that what's negatively impacting their physical and mental well being is stress surrounding being unfairly treated and discriminated against based on unacknowledged cultural differences in the workplace, and that company's leaders then respond by saying that that's a personal matter that doesn't involve work. See, we're not talking about that culture stuff, then they would have missed the opportunity to show that they value the entire person, not just their work product. No, DEI or a few creative names for it doesn't have to be the company's new number one priority. But if they're going to convey that their employees are more than just numbers or products, but that they genuinely care for the well being of everyone, then it's worth taking the time to learn who they are as a whole, what matters to them as a person, and show appreciation for them by allowing them room to be themselves, their full cultural selves. Not only that, but research and leadership development, something that the companies say that they focus on, supports the reality that employees who feel culturally seen, heard, and understood are more effective workers. And that benefits everyone, even the company's bottom line. As such, subtle variations may have been their benefit, and they may have other benefits, but so does calling out cultural identity and values directly in a healthy way, showing that you're not afraid to be yourself and you're not afraid for them to be themselves reduces the likelihood that they will need to fight to be seen, to be valued and appreciated, not above others and more special, but alongside of everyone else and not below. And with that in mind, I offer consideration number three. Sometimes it's worth fighting to preserve the name. Ever since I was a child in school, I always hated watching bullies scrunch up their face and use a whiny voice to make something that they don't like sound bad. What made it worse was that I began to see more and more often that it was when someone was beginning to lose an argument and they had no other credible points to make, that they just repeated the last thing someone said in their voice to mock them. The most effective bullies would galvanize their peers to make people feel bad for not even having good things, or to feel bad about the good things that they did have. Like, look at her with her clean clothes on, thinking she's smart because she gets good grades just because you study. It would be laughable, except it worked. The subjects of these ridicule would be seen trying to dirty their clothes to avoid the ridicule, or study less and look less smart to avoid that kind of response. The problem with that was that it gave more power to the bullies, all to the cost of their educational progress, as well as to their personal sense of self. This is what I think of when I see companies who previously saw the value of creating DEI programs, only to run away from them when bullies made them sound bad. Now, I have to admit, Some of these companies were never on board with the healthy appreciation for everyone and only approved the DEI programs in the beginning to avoid the employee pressure that got a little bit too high. For those people, being able to have permission to cancel these programs came as a relief. And yet, right alongside of these companies, we find other companies and leaders discussing with their DEI task force leaders that they're doing a great job, that they're appreciated for creating culturally safe work environments for everyone, not just the small minority of people, but for everyone right alongside them. And those people being asked to rebrand or get fired. See, the sport is still there, but the fear of being seen or unseen by those bullies got too hot for them to handle. It is here when I recommend at least considering preserving a name. Again, not for the name's sake. For as I mentioned earlier, it's not about the combination of letters that matters, it's the mission behind it. And while sometimes you can keep the essence despite changing the name, sometimes it's worth standing up to the bully and saying, see, what you're arguing against, making people feel bad for who they are, is not what our program does. So we're not going to change our name because there's nothing wrong with our name or our program. Our name just is a reminder of what we're actually trying to do. It may remind you of something someone else did or that you fear me what we might do. But instead of changing our name, we'd much rather show you how to value what we do alongside of what everything else does. Alongside of the fact that you haven't had the pleasure of feeling valued, we want to show you value and show you that our program is what can contribute to that. See, we'll let our actions speak louder than our words. Actions speak louder than our name, because that's really what you're looking for if you're really actually listening. See, with all this in mind, my hope for you is that you will be able to keep these considerations in mind moving forward, whether you're in an organization or a company that is making difficult decisions like this, or whether you're a decision maker yourself, or whether you're just watching large and small companies alike manage this admittedly difficult dilemma. Remember, there's no one size fits all solution, and people will make decisions based on several seen and unseen factors. Most importantly, though, whether or not a company rebrands their DEI programs or initiatives, the question I want you to ask and look for is what difference is it making in their efforts to make everyone they employ or serve feel culturally seen, heard, and understood more and more every day. And with that, I'll say thanks again for listening to today's Diversity Dude podcast. If you have any pressing diversity-related questions that you'd like me to address on an upcoming podcast, or if your organization is in need of a shame-free and empowering guest speaker or training on this often sensitive topic, feel free to reach out to me directly at diversitymadesimple.com. And if you know of anyone else who can benefit from a positive and encouraging perspective on this often difficult topic of diversity, feel free to send them a link to this podcast so they can be encouraged as well, or share with them my award-winning book, Diversity in Clinical Practice, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget to visit TED.com and check out my talk on what to do when you offend someone. I hope it inspires you and that you share with someone else so they can be inspired as well. And as usual, I look forward to addressing as many topics as possible in future podcasts to help you improve as many relationships as possible at work, at home, and in your community. And as always, remember this: you don't need to know everything about everyone in order to have a positive impact on someone. Thank you all for tuning in and have a great day.
Tune in each week and find out how to demand and implement diversity at your job. To hear more, check out previous Diversity Dude shows on ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com.
Shaletta makes you laugh. But did you know Shaletta Brundage can also make you think and boost your business? Media personality, activist, and comedian Shaletta Brundage founded Shaletta Makes Me Laugh to celebrate and share the best of Black culture. It's a podcasting platform. You can download 10 weekly podcasts hosted by African-American subject experts at ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com is also a production house, creating broadcast quality commercial content. And Shaletta and her team of storytellers create powerful promotional campaigns to get businesses the brand awareness they're looking for. Some of Minnesota's top businesses trust Shaletta, and you can too. Get out the word about your events and products and get in front of communities of color with ShalettaMakesMeLaugh.com. She's got the power to help your business.
What's up, everyone? It's Shaletta. I'm here getting a phone for one of my newly minted teenagers with Xfinity Mobile. They've got great options, affordable plans, and solid coverage that works for our whole family. With Xfinity Mobile, my daughter can stay connected with me wherever she goes. And did you know when you sign up, you can get an extra phone line free for a full year? Switch to Xfinity Mobile today for more savings, more smiles, and more ways to stay connected.